Check. We are live. I think. What is up on a Saturday afternoon in which my wife is gone and my kids are asleep? We had. Welcome to Choo Choo Crew. It does something funny and weird. Oh, I gotta keep my stopwatch open. We had a user on the Discord say that 18xx games are daunting because they're harder to teach than your modern Euro or your big Euro even. So I decided, screw that. I'm gonna just teach 1830. I say, you know what? I'll throw down the gauntlet. I'll do a full teach, soup to nuts of 1830, and see how long it is, and you can compare that to your modern Euro, because I don't know. It seems fun, and I have nothing else to do. I can't read chat, so if you're chatting me, I'm going to ignore you. Oh, you know what? I can probably read chat on my phone, but I'm kind of an old man. So I'm going to pull up the chat. I'm going to start a timer. I'm going to do the full teach of 1830 and see how it goes. I feel like I have a number in mind. The number to beat is 45 minutes because that's how long this person said it took them to do on Mars. I think I can beat 45 minutes. But regardless, most of what people say about 18xx is just old nonsense, especially compared to modern games. But let's see how it goes. I haven't prepared anything. I have no examples prepared. I don't think I'll miss any rules. And we're just going to do this soup to nuts teach of 1830. I'm going to start this timer. Let me see if I need to prep anything else. I know that's cheating, right? I have a company. I have my hand. We have the bank. We have the IPO. We have tiles. We've got trains. All right. It's not going to be a Micro Machines ad, Xander. Yeah, James said on Mars an hour from scratch. So we'll see. Let's see how this 1830 goes. Obviously, there's not going to be anyone stopping me asking questions, but anybody who's ever watched one of my teachers knows they're grossly in depth. So I should hit everything. And after anyone would watch this, they'd likely be able to play 1830. All right, let's hit the timer. I should be doing things like working or working on the podcast, but this seems more fun. And I'll give myself like 30 seconds. I think the timer's going. Oh, it's going, baby. All right. Go to dadsonamap.com if you want to find out anything about the show. I don't know how you'd get here if you weren't already subscribed. So here we go. 10 seconds. I'm not going to speak fast. I'm just going to do the teach normally so we get a real thing. And we're good. Okay, so this is 1830, an 18xx game, the fundamental 18xx game. I'm going to teach the game. I'm going to do an overview of some of the components and what you're looking at. I'm probably going to go over some vocabulary that just makes it easier to teach. After that, the game really happens in two phases. We're going to have these things called stock rounds, where players will be trading stock. And then we're going to have these things called operating rounds, where players will be operating train companies. The goal of this game is to make the most money. To make the most money, you will have the most money in your personal account, which in a real game would be player chips, as well as the value of all of the stocks that you own added up. So we're going to be tracking the value of the stocks over here on this stock market, and I'll get into how that works. But at the end of the game, you will take the value of all of your stocks. You will add that to the value of all the money that you have personally. You'll add those two numbers together, and that's your score. Whoever has the highest score is the winner. We're going to go over just some entities and some things, and then we'll start the teach. So the first, again, is the stock market. That exists over here on the stock market. Each company in the game, and we'll go over companies in 1 second, will have a token. The tokens will move around, and that will just represent the value of one share of that company. So if the PRR was at 90, that company will be worth 90. We have a par section. We'll go over that when we teach the stock market. We also have a map. The map is where the companies interact with each other. We'll be laying tiles and tokens on the map, and we'll be running trains. And again, we'll go over through that out to teach. But when I say tiles, I mean these things. When I say tokens, I mean these things on the company charter. And when I say run trains, I mean these pieces of paper, which we'll go over in a second. The next major concept you need to know in 18xx is there are player banks that represents your money, and then there are independently operating companies, train companies in the game. There are 8 of them. These train companies have their own banks with their own money, and never the two shall mix. You can never freely give money to a company, and a company can never give freely money to you. A company can never freely give money to another company. Everything in this game is based on transactions, and only certain transactions are legal. So the key again is you will have your personal money. Companies that you operate may have their personal money, but that company is not tied to you. It is its own entity. So what are we looking at for each company? Each company in this game has 10 shares. It has 9 pieces of paper. The 10 shares are its president's cert, and then which is worth 20% of the company, and then every other share is worth 10% of the company. That is the same for every single company in the game. Every company has some varied number of tokens. We'll go over what tokens do. It has a home token, and then tokens that are a different amount to place. And then each company has a unique home location on the map, and they're listed on the map. So the first type of, and then we'll go over trains for a second, because I'm going to use the word called phase. These are the trains in the game. We'll talk about how you buy them and where they go. The important thing is companies will own trains, and whatever the highest rank of train that is owned by a company is the current phase we're in. I'm going to go over that again. It's just going to save me time from having to say, check the phase. So companies will buy trains in order. Again, we'll go over this. But if we were currently in the game and all of these trains were owned, and a company owned a 4 train, we would be in, you can either call it phase 4 or, I don't know, it depends on the game. I'm going to call it the phase of the train. So I'm going to call that phase 4. If all 4 trains were owned by companies, but a 5 train wasn't, even though the 5 train is the next train on deck, we would not be in phase 5 because the 5 train is not owned. Once the 5 train gets bought, we're going to say we're in phase 5. I'm going to go over that again, but just remember, phase is tied to the currently owned train. It's the only thing you have to remember for now. It'll just make it easier on the teach as well. I'm not going to talk about how we start the game. I'm not going to talk about how we end the game because those two things will fall out as we play. What you need to know is, in this game, aside from the very first thing, which is initial auction, which just separates player positions, the game will proceed as follows. It will be a single stock round, and we'll go over what stock rounds are, followed by 1, 2, or 3 operating rounds. If we're in phase 2, you'll notice that little yellow corresponds to the yellow train. We will have 1 operating round. So we'll do stock round, operating round, stock round, operating round. If we're in phase 2, before we enter the operating round, and I'll go over that again, so that would be, if we're in phase 3 or 4, which is these green trains, we would have 2 operating rounds. And finally, if we're in phase 5, 6, or D, which are brown, and these are supposed to be brown, we will have 3 operating rounds. So what can you do in a stock round? So the game will functionally start with a stock round after the auction. On the stock round, you can do 3 actions. 1, pass. Pass is super easy. A turn order will be set after the initial auction, and then turn order will stick for the rest of the game. So if I'm player 1, after my turn in the stock round, say turn order landed on me, and we'll go over how turn order moves. Say turn order landed on me after the initial auction, I'd be turn 1, I would do my stock turn, it would then go to player 2, it would then go to player 3, it would go to player 4, and it will always stay in that order for the rest of the game. I might bring some player things down to make that easy to see. This will be player 2. You know what, I'll even type it. I'm not even going to take the time out to do this. Player 2. We'll make that a little bit bigger. So in a stock round, you can do you can do up to 3 things. The first thing you can do is pass. Pass simply means I do nothing. When you pass, you can re-enter the stock round. So the stock round does not end until all players pass in order. So I may pass on my turn, and then if it comes back to me, because not every other player passed, I can then choose to act. If, however, every other player passes, say we're playing a 2-player game and it's my turn in the stock round and I pass and then player 2 passes, the stock round ends. I do not have a choice to act again. However, if I pass and player 2 acts, then I can act again. And then we keep going until we're done. The next thing you can do is sell a stock. So to sell a stock, there are a couple rules. One, we're going to put some stocks in my hand. Let's say I have 2 of these and 3 of these and 5 of these in the bank. So I did not mention the bank, and I will do that now. You can sell a share. So to sell a share, all you do is you take a share that you, what I put the NYC to, you take a share that you own, at least one share. You can sell as many shares as you like, not just one. So you will take as many shares as you want from your hand, and you will put them into this area called the bank pool. You will then take from the bank whatever the current stock value is. So the PRR is 90, and I'm going to sell 2 shares of the PRR. I put them in the bank pool, bada bing, bada boom, and I cheated, that's an NYC. I'll take my 2 PRR shares, put them in the bank pool, and I will get whatever this value is times 2, because I sold 2 shares. So I will take 90 from the bank, take from the bank, take from the bank. You'll see there was $12,000 up there, now there's $1182. The next thing you'll do is you'll take this stock marker and bada bing, bada boom, move it for however many shares you sold. So I sold 2, so I moved it down 2. Some caveats. If the marker is already at the bottom, it simply does not move. So if I sold a single share of NYC, it would not move because it has nowhere to go. Next thing, if at any time there is 50% of a company in the bank pool, you cannot sell it. That rule is never breakable. It will never be broken in 1830. So I have 3 shares of the NYC. I cannot sell a share of the NYC because there's 50% of the company in the bank pool. Next rule, you cannot sell a president's cert into the bank pool. So we'll go over how you get a president's cert in 1 second. But if you have a president's cert, you cannot sell it into the bank pool. The only way you can get rid of a president's cert is if there is another player who could legally become president. So say this were the case, and I had 2 shares of the PRR, and player 2 had 2 shares of the PRR, I could say I'm going to sell this into the bank. Just for completeness sake, I would get 150 because it's a 75. You'll notice it only goes down 1 tick because it hit the bottom. So I would take my 150, bada boom, from the bank. Now, president certs can never be in the bank pool. So player 2 would actually get the president cert, and he would put his 2 shares into the bank pool. Who gets a president cert? Whomever has the most shares of a company after the person would sell the president cert into the bank becomes president. So if we had player 2 with 2 shares, but then we had player 3 with 3 shares, 2, 3. Player 2 would get skipped over. They only have 2 certs. Player 3 would become president. They would put their 2 certs in, and their 1 cert would be left over. If players are tied, it's just in turn order. So if they each had 2 shares, and I sold this presidency in, player 2 would become president simply because they are next to me in turn order. So that is selling. You can never go over 50%. You can never go sell a president cert into the bank pool. The only time you can sell a president cert is if there's someone there who can take it. Next rule. You can buy a single piece of paper. What does that mean? A single piece of paper. You'll notice there is a president cert. That's 1 piece of paper. There are stocks. That's another piece of paper. So to buy a single piece of paper that's not a president cert, it's very, very easy. You know what? Let's go over starting a company first. So to start a company, you will do 2 things. 1, you will pick a par value. And 2, you will pay for the president's cert. So the company could not have been started before. That's the only rule. You pick a par value. It's one of these 5, 6 values. So let's say I'm going to start the NYNH because I have that down there. I'm going to start at 76. So I'll put this token here at 76, and I'll put this token here at 76. The NYNH is now started. I will pay 76 times 2 because the president's share is worth 76 times 2. I will take the president's cert and I'll put it in my hand. The New York New Haven is now started. People can now do things to it. That's the only thing you need to do to start a railroad. You simply have to be able to afford 2 shares of it. You will pick a par. The par can be any of these numbers, and then you'll put its token on the stock chart. So right now we covered sell, we covered start a company, which is in part of buy a single piece of paper. The next thing you can do is buy a piece of paper. There are two different places you can buy paper from in this game. You can buy it from the IPO, which is the initial public offering, or you can buy it from the bank pool. To buy it from the IPO, you will always pay its IPO price. So this is basically representing, hey, this company just started and we just IPO'd it. So we're saying the stocks are worth 76. So if there are pieces of paper here, you will always pay the IPO price. You can also buy it from the market. If you buy it from the market, you pay whatever the market value is. So in this case, say I started the PRR at 82, but it's been sold a bunch and ran. So now in the market, the PRR is worth 70, and in the IPO, it's worth 82. So if it's my turn, I might say, I'm going to buy a share of the PRR from the market. I'm going to pay 70. The next player might, or spend money. The next player might, for some reason, who knows, let's give them some money. Say, I need to buy the PRR from the IPO. They would pay 82. So I'm going to go over the entire stock turn. Oh, I'm sorry. The only limitations from buying are you cannot own more than 60% of a company. If you ever do own more than 60% of a company, you are forced to sell down to 60%. You cannot buy a share of a company that you've sold this stock round. Not this stock turn, this stock round. So if my first action in the stock round was to sell the PRR, I could not buy a PRR share until the next stock round. So we will go to operating rounds, and then you come back to the stock round. Then you can buy another PRR share. Those are the two limits on buying. If you've sold it this round, not this turn, anytime this round, you cannot buy it. And if you're over 60%, or if you're at 60%, you cannot buy it. So imagine I had 4 more shares of the New York New Haven, and I'll try to make this less confusing by taking these shares out. That didn't work because the world is awesome. So right now I own 2, 3, 4, 5, 60% of the New York New Haven. I could not buy another share of the New York New Haven. There are some exceptions to the buy rule. One, if the company ever ends up in this orange zone of the stock market, you are allowed to own more than 60% of it. If it ever comes out of that orange zone and we're in a stock round and it's your turn, notice I said that, it's very important. If you're in a stock round and it's your turn, you are forced to sell down to 60%. If a company ever ends up in brown, you can not only own more than 60% of it, you can buy as many shares as you want from the market as one action. So say the PRR was down at 20. On my turn, for a single action, I could buy both these shares from the market for $40. That rule is a little weird. Some people play that you can also buy from the IPO. Some people play you can only buy from the market multiple times. It's not clear. The general consensus is you can buy as many shares as you want from the market. So brown, as many shares as you want from the market as a single action, and you can own more than 60%. Orange, you can own more than 60%. The last buy rule and what yellow means. Over here on this chart, the game tells you, depending on the player count, how many pieces of paper you're allowed to own. Right now, me as player 1 owns, and this is not shares, notice, pieces of paper. Right now, I own, I'm going to deal these all to this player. I'm not, maybe I am. Okay, right now I own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of paper. We're in a 3-player game. I'm allowed to own 20 pieces of paper. If a company is ever past this yellow zone, so yellow, orange, or brown, their shares do not count as pieces of paper. So what that means is right now I, to the game, only own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of paper. That is strategically very important. But all you need to know is if you ever end up over cert limit, so if you ever end up over 20 pieces of paper, countable pieces of paper, if it's your turn in the stock round, you are forced to sell to get under that limit. If your company is in yellow, orange, or brown, you can do all those funny buying things, and also it no longer counts against your paper limit. In a stock turn, you are allowed to sell shares, buy a single piece of paper, and then sell shares again. You can also pass. There is going to be an item called priority deal. Priority deal is the player who will go next in the next stock round. Whoever acts last. Say it was my turn. My last action was buying a share. Let's say I buy a share of the New York or the NYC for 100 from the market. I'd spend my 100. Say player 2 passed, say player 3 passed, and then say I passed. You will give priority deal to whoever is left of the last player to act, which would be player 2. And then at the beginning of the next stock round, that player will be the first actor. They will be the first to act. And then you just keep going clockwise. And that is an entire stock round. That's how the stock round works. After a stock round, we go to what is called an operating round, where we'll operate companies. Companies are always operated by their presidents. Their presidents make all the decisions. Shareholders do not have any say. Only a president has a decision. Nothing in the game is binding. So that's it. People are just trolling me in the... I'm not going faster. I'm just going to do the teach exactly how I would do it. So the nice thing about operating companies is it is incredibly procedural. You will always do these 5 steps. You simply cannot not do them. You will always do them for every company. Companies will what we call operate in stock order. What that means is whichever company has the highest stock price will operate first. If 2 companies are tied for stock price, whichever company's stock price is further right will operate. So NYC is 100, PR is 100. NYC is further right, so they will operate. New York, New Haven's 25, they'll operate last. On your stock turn, you will always, or on your operating turn, you will always layer upgrade track. You can choose not to, but you always have the option to layer upgrade a single piece of track. Which track you can lay? If it's on a bear hex, you can only lay yellow track. So I'm the PRR. I can only lay yellow track. On my first turn, I'll lay this piece of track. Rules for laying track, it just has to connect to, when a company floats, you actually put out its home token, which I didn't say. Oh, I didn't even talk about floating. I missed floating. Jesus. How does a company ever get money? Man, a company is just started when you buy 20%. The company does not float, which is a fancy stock term for become a company, until 60% of it is owned. It doesn't matter who it's owned by, just as long as 60% of it is not in the IPO, it is considered operated. Once a company floats, it gets 10 times its IPO price. So this was 74. I will take 740 and put it into the company. The company now has its money. Its market value, 76. I'm a dingus. Its market value does not matter. The only thing that matters is what it was IPO'd at. You can sell shares of a company that hasn't started or floated. You can buy shares of a company that hasn't started or floated. But a company will not float and get its money and will not operate until 60% of it is owned. A company that hasn't floated but was started will just get skipped in the operating round. Say for some reason a player they did the Xander. Xander's in chat. Say a player did the Xander and bought the presidency of the NYC and then 2 more shares. So only 40% of the NYC was owned and the rest of it was in the IPO. Let's pretend it is. When we get to its turn, say it was IPO'd at like 82. When we get to its turn in the stock round, it simply will not operate. So that's a really important number in this game. 6 times your par price is what you personally need to have in order to float a company. So the lowest number in this game is 67 times 6, which is 402. I can't believe I missed floating. Floating's very important. So all floated companies will operate, which again is all companies which have at least had 60% of their selves bought out. The first action a company will do is put down its home token if it's not down. So let's pretend I'm operating the PRR because it is floated. And let's pretend that the PRR, what did we IPO it at? 82. So the PRR will be at 820. And we'll take that money and let's pretend that I'm the president of the PRR and enough shares have been bought. You can be the president of many companies. So we'll do the PRR and then we'll do the MYNH. So the first thing you can do is put out its home token. Its home token is its token on the map. The next thing you can do is lay track. If it's a bear hex, you can only lay yellow track. To lay track, you simply just have to have the track connected to a token that you own. The track has to be connected and... my kid might wake up. And you cannot run through the tokens of another company. Oh no, I might have to end this because my poor son might be awake. So imagine this were the case, and we'll just do this whole thing. I'm laying tokens. This would be much more than one operating round, but we'll just go later in the game. And let's pretend that the CNO is floated. Okay, it's my turn as the PRR. I can lay a yellow track there because bada bing, bada boom, I'm connected to it and it does not go through a token of another company. I could not lay a yellow track here because as you come along, the CNO player has this token. I can't go through their token because I don't own that station. And thus, I could not lay a yellow track here. The next thing you can do instead of lay a track is upgrade a tile that corresponds to the current color of phase. So you can always upgrade a yellow to a green tile as long as we're in at least the green phase, so phase 3 or 4. You can upgrade a green to a brown tile as long as we're in phase 5 or 6 or D, the brown phase. So you can never lay a green, you can never lay a brown, you can only upgrade to green or brown. You'll notice there are a couple tiles on the map that are already yellow. They cannot be laid or upgraded until we're in the correct phase. So you can't lay this, it's called a 00 tile, until we're in green. You can't lay NYC until we're in green. You can't lay upgrade Boston until we're in green, which is phase 3 or 4, and we'll get over that in a second. So to lay a tile, you simply just put it down. To upgrade a tile, you simply just remove the tile from the board and you put a tile back on the board. The only rule about the tile you're placing is it has to preserve the existing track. So I couldn't upgrade it with this because it doesn't preserve this straight city. Upgrading you can do through a token because you're not going through it. Well, you can't do it through a token, but you can do it around a token. So say the CNO had a token here. I'm going to have to stop. My poor kid is up. I'm going to pause the clock and I'll be back. Say the CNO is here. The PRR could upgrade this tile because it's not actually running through that location. It's simply just upgrading it. And now you'll notice there are 2 city locations here. What does that mean? The PRR or any other company now can reach past this tile because we call it tokened out because that city is no longer tokened out. If the PRR were to place its token there, and we'll go over that in literally the next step, if the PRR would place its token there, other companies now cannot run through this city because it is tokened out. Both city spots are taken. There are no 3-hold cities in 1830, so once a city has 2 tokens in it, it is tokened out for the rest of the game. No other companies can run through it. So again, the only rule for upgrading is you can reach the tile legally, and we are currently in the phase that you want to upgrade to, and you retain the existing routes. So a good example is this tile is a curved green, so I can put any of the curved tiles that keep that gentle, we call it a gentle curve. So I can put this gentle curve, I could put these 2 gentles. What I couldn't put is something like this straight tight because, hey, that tile doesn't exist. Or that track doesn't exist. Important things about tiles, when you replace them, they go back into the tile tray, and tile counts are piece limited. You cannot, once a tile's out, you can't use it again. That's super important for these weird green tiles. There's 1 of these in the entire game. The only way to get it back into the supply is to then upgrade it to brown, and it goes back. So that's lay a tile. There are terrain costs on the map. To lay those tiles, you have to pay the terrain cost. Your company needs to have that money before you lay the track. So let's imagine this would be a crazy lay, but we're just living in a life, that it was the PRR's turn, and it wanted to lay this track. The first thing it would do would be spend $120 out of its treasury, its hard-earned money, to lay that track. It has to have the $120 at that time. Once it pays it, it can lay it however it wants. Once someone has paid the cost initially, it never has to get paid again. So if I were going to upgrade that tile, I wouldn't have to pay whatever's underneath. It's only to lay it the first time. So that's lay track. The next thing you can do is lay a token. So to place this token, you have to have the token available. You have to be able to reach the city spot. So the PRR can't token here. It can't reach it. It can't token here. It can't reach it. It could token here because it could reach it. If we did something like this, and I threw this out, and I put this K here. And I did something like this, and something like this. And it was the B&O's turn. The B&O player could not token this city because it cannot run through this tile because it is tokened out. So the token rules are the same as the tile upgrade rules. So B&O can't reach here because this is tokened out. It cannot token there. All you need to do is be able to reach the spot. You're going to pay whatever price is on the token. So 40, 100, 100. I would pay 100, we'll say. Spend the oh, that's too much. Spend the money. Take my token. Plop it on the city. It's there forever. Tokens never go away. You can't get rid of them. You can't get them back. Once you place them, they're gone. So we just put down track, purchase a station. Next thing we'll do is run trains. We'll go over run trains in a second because first we have to get some trains. Actually, let's just do run trains now. No, we'll skip run trains, pay dividends for purchase trains. The last step of an operating round is always purchase trains. A company has to own a train if it has a legal route. So a legal route in this game is any two revenue centers connected to a token. So the PRR can connect these two revenue centers. That's a legal route. If somehow, imagine these tokens weren't there, which could never happen, the PRR still can connect these two or these two. That's a legal route. It has to own a train. There are certain companies that start the game without legal routes. The B&O is one. B&O does not have a legal route when it starts. If somehow we got to the end of the B&O's turn and it was like this, it would not be compelled to own a train. But otherwise, as long as you have a legal route, you have to own a train. To buy trains, which again is the last step, I'm skipping over run trains just so we can go over how you buy trains. To buy trains, you simply take the topmost train from the stack and you put it in your company. And you spend however much money it costs. This cost 80, so I'll spend 80. You can buy as many trains as you want on your turn up to the train limit. The train limit's on the charter. This company can own 4 trains. Once we're in phase 4, you can only own 3 trains. Once we're in phase 5 through diesel, you can only own 2 trains. You can never be above train limit. If the phase changes and you are above train limit, you'll have to spit your train out into the bank. We'll go over that again in a second. And you can't buy a train that we're going to go over rusting in a second. You can't buy a train to rust your other trains to get you back under limit. So what does that mean? You always have to buy whatever train is on the top of the stack. So imagine the PRR bought 4 2 trains. That would be a brazen of them, but let's just imagine they did, and we'll spend all 4 of it. And then let's imagine we get back to the PRR's turn. You will see on each train this thing that says rusted by the 4. What that means is when the first 4 train is bought, immediately when the first 4 train is bought, all 2 trains go away. They all go away. They leave the game. No nothing. They're gone. You take them off your charter. You get rid of them out of the game. On the 3 trains, you'll see rusted by the 6. On the 4 trains, you'll see rusted by the diesel. And then finally, 5, 6, and diesels are permanent, which means nothing rusts them. So again, when a train is purchased of the rank that rusts the train, all those trains go away. Going back to my train point, I currently have 4 2s. Even though the 4 rusts the 2s, I can't buy a 4 to rust my 2s, which would then put me under train limit. I'd only be on 1 train. That's illegal. You simply cannot buy a train from anywhere if you're at train limit. Other locations you can buy a train. You can buy a train from the bank. Trains will end up in the bank if somehow you go over bank limit, which would mean if like someone had a 4... Imagine someone had a 4 and 2 3 trains, and then we went to phase 5 where the train limit goes down to 2. They would have to take one of their trains and put them in the bank. So you can always buy them from the bank. That'll be at whatever cost they are. The next place you can buy them is from other companies. If trains are in a different company and the president of that company agrees, note, it's typically you. You're typically the president of both companies. You can buy a train for any amount of money. So from the bank and from the train line, you can only ever buy them for exactly what they're listed at. From another company, you can buy them from any number of money. That could be $1. I could spend $1, and you pay that not back to the bank, you pay it to the next company. So NYNH might take $1, and I might take $1. You could buy it for all of your money. There is no limit. The only limit is that you have to have it. I can spend $2.79 to buy its last 2 train. You can't go over train limit. You can't spend money that the company doesn't have. But aside from that, there are no rules. Aside from that, the president agrees. That's a very good way to move money in between companies. The last thing you can do is forced train purchase. A forced train purchase happens when a company simply cannot afford its I locked the twos. That's silly. Cannot afford to purchase a train. Say it's my turn, and say some dastardly man or woman or any type of person, say it was this B&O player, bought the fours. Oh, what a guy! And I had no money because I just gave it all to the New York New Haven for whatever reason. So my train's all just rusted. I have no money. I am what they call forced to buy a train. How you force buy a train is pretty simple. The first thing you do is you come to the president and you say, how much money can you give me? And this president says, I can give you $48. Well, that's not enough to buy a four. A four costs $300. When you force buy a train, you buy whatever the cheapest train is from the bank or the train stock, whatever is cheaper. So if there was a 3 in the bank, I'd have to buy the 3. If there's a 4 in the bank and a 4 here, I can pick. Usually there's not a train in the bank, but there might be. So I need to come up with $300. Well, I have 48, so now I need to come up with 252. The president then sells stock in one action to make up the difference. You will sell it at market value, and you still can't break the rules. You can't sell a president's cert into the pool unless someone can take it, and you can't go over 50%. And then there's one additional rule, which is you cannot sell the presidency at all of the company that you are operating right now. So this PRR, even if, say, unsuspecting player 3 had 2 shares of it, could not trade hands because it's the company force buying. The New York New Haven, which I might have to sell shares for, could trade hands because that is not the company I'm force buying for. The last rule is you can technically force buy from another player. You just can only force buy up to the price of the train. You can't force buy for more than the cost of the train. That is really nasty, and if you ever want to look up triple company dumps in 1830. But I'm not going to super get into it. So say I was force buying here. I have $0. I need to make up 252. PRR is at 100. So if I sell 2 of them into the bank, that'll be 200. New York New Haven is at 25. So if I sell 3 of those, I get 75. Altogether, that's 275. I'm going to take 275. I'm going to give this company $300 because I'm the president and I have to. I'm going to spend $300 from my personal cash. This company is going to spend its $300 to get the 4 train. These shares will all go into the market, and then we will adjust them as if we did a sell in the stock round. Down 2, down, we hit the floor, so down 2. That's buying trains. You can buy as many trains as you can afford, up to train limit. You can buy them from the train pool. You can buy them from the bank pool. You can buy them from other companies. When you buy them from the train or bank pool, you have to buy them for their value. When you buy them from other companies, you can buy them for any amount of money. Unless you're force buying, then you can only buy them for up to their value. We went over force buying and why you have to own a train. So skip forward to after tokens. Companies run trains. Running a train is pretty simple. Each train has a number. The number represents how many revenue centers you can hit. And when you run trains, you simply cannot reuse track. You have to run them from a token, and you can not run through tokened out cities. So if I was running, let's pretend the PRR has a 4 train. It can't have a 2 train because that would be rusted, and a 3 train. What does the 4 train mean? It means it can hit 4 revenue centers. What are revenue centers? Literally anything that has a value. This is a revenue center. This is a revenue center. We call these offboards. We call these cities. We call the little hashes, we call them dits or whistle stops or ticks. All of those are revenue centers. To count a revenue center, you can count a revenue center if it's tokened out if you're not going to run through it. So we're going to say the PRR runs its 3 train here, here, and here. And then we're going to say it runs its 4 train here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll notice I reuse this city. Reusing a city is fine. It's not considered reusing track. Reusing track would be if I ran the 3 train here and then ran the 4 train over the same route. Or say I tried to run the 3 train 1, 2, 3, and then the 4 train 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I'm reusing all of these pieces of track. You can't do that. But you can always hit a city multiple times as long as you don't run through that city on the same track multiple times. You could even come into and out of a city as long as they don't cross. So you could, as the PRR, do something like this and go up and down into that city, and then you could run from here and out and up into this C&O token. You can do that because you're not reusing physically the same line. The last thing you can't do is turn around on these. These aren't junctions. You can't turn around on them. So if you go out this Y and up, you can never come into this Y and back because it's considered reusing that tiny piece of track. What you're going to do is count every piece of revenue that you hit. So we ran our 3 train here, here, and here. We just count it in 1. So we hit 3, 1, and 3 is 7. And the 4 train hit here, 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 and here. We count that as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 and 7 is 17. We call it 17 because in 18xx, you can do, this is going to be more than 45 minutes. This is so thorough, though. In 18xx, in 1830, all 10 shares will always pay out. So every payout is divided by 10. You'll divide any share in the bank is going to pay to the company. Any share in a player's hand is going to pay to the player. Any share in the IPO will pay to no one. So we ran 170 divided by 10. There are 1, 2, 3 NYNH shares there and 3 in my hand. You can then decide to do one of two things with your run. You can pay it out or you can withhold. If you pay it out, you will move your stock forward. As long as you pay out, you move your stock forward. You then pay out the shares. So the NYNH would take 17 times 3, take, because it has 3 shares in the bank pool. I would take 17 times 3, take. Imagine some other player had a single share. Say player 2 had 1 share. They would take 17 times 1 because we paid out. If, on the other hand, you withhold, your stock will always move back. Your stock, if it can't move back, will move down unless it can't move down. You follow the arrows. Over here, if you paid out here, your stock will move up because the arrow says move up. If it can't move right. It always moves right unless it can't, it moves up. Anytime in any of these games that your stock token moves into an area that another token is in, it will move underneath. Underneath. Because again, operating order is, I didn't say that, I'm sorry. Operating order is value right to left, and then if you're in the same box, it's whoever's on top. So whoever was there first. So that's running trains. Super simple. When you withhold, all the money goes into your company. So I would withhold 170. My stock would move back. I would take all the money. Stockholders get nothing. My stock moves back unless it can't. So every company will do that once. They will lay a track. They will possibly lay a track, possibly purchase a station, run trains, pay or withhold, and then purchase trains. And then if they're forced to purchase a train, they will force buy a train. You will do that all the way through the companies. Typically, we flip them when they're operated to remember that they operated. In this case, we would only do PRR and MYNH because the MYC hasn't floated. If you're in phase 1 and you did that one time, you'll go back to a stock round. Whoever has priority deal will start selling and buying shares or passing. If you're in phase 3 or 4, you'll do that 2 times. You'll run an operating round, you'll run another operating round, and then you'll go to the stock round. If you're in phase 5 or 6 or D, you will do it 3 times before you enter the stock round. We have to go over a couple things. Privates, the initial auction, and how the game ends. How the game ends in 2 ways. 1, this bank runs out of money. The bank starts with 12,000. We'll get a bunch of money in the beginning. When it runs out of money, you continue to pay it out, so it'll go into negatives. You play to the end of the operating round. If somehow it ends out of money, the end of all the operating rounds, we call that an operating set. So you'll likely be in brown. Say the bank breaks in the first OR of your 3 ORs, you play till the end of the last OR, and then the game ends. If the bank breaks in the stock round because someone sold a share and that broke the bank, you will then play a complete set of ORs, and the game is over. Whoever has the most money plus the most stocks wins. Money in your company, worth nothing. If during a forced train purchase, someone does not have enough money to buy the least expensive train, they are bankrupt. You do all the stock adjusting, and the game is immediately over. When any player bankrupts, it's over for all players. Whoever has the most value after a bankruptcy wins. That is how you play 1830. That is, I think, all of the rules. We're going to go over the last 2 things, and then you'll be good to play. The last 2 things are how we start the game. and then when you can buy privates. I'm actually just going to reload the mod because it cleans it up. We'll do the private auction, and then we'll be good to go. So this game starts with all players getting an amount of money from the bank. Imagine, again, let's say we're in 4-player. Every player will take $600. That money does come from the bank. So you'll see at the top, I'll take 600. We'll have red player take 600, 500, and 100 because I'm good at typing. And then blue takes 600. All players took $600. Imagine there's a 4th player. I don't know. I'm not very good at speed running. The first thing we'll do in this game is have an initial auction. All the initial auction does is separate player positions. The game starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 private railroads. They're little railroads that just are supposed to represent, little starting railroads. We will have a private auction in the 18xx community. We call it a waterfall auction. What these privates do, we'll go over the auction, and then we'll go over their powers, and then you'll be good to play. On your turn in the auction, you randomly assign a first player. Let's imagine, it was blue. On your turn in the auction, you simply say, I am going to bid on a private, or I'm going to buy the cheapest private. So right now, the player who is blue can place a bid on any of these 6 privates or buy the Schuylkill Valley. Let's imagine that they're going to place a bid, and we'll use blue tokens to signify their bid. Your first bid has to be at least $5 over the bid that is written, and then bids always have to go up over $5. So they might say, I'm going to bid on the Mohawk and Hudson, and I'm going to bid $115, which is the minimum. It then goes to the next player in clockwise order, and they'll be yellow. And let's pretend that I say I would like to bid on the Delaware and Hudson. My minimum bid is $75. We'll say, usually you mark this with chips or something. We'll say, look, it's the red player's turn. They also want to bid on the Mohawk and Hudson. Their bid has to be at least $5 higher than the C&O player's bid. C&O player's bid was $115. People do this in all different ways. You can just use a number of chips to represent $5 increments. You can just remember, you can write it down. We just write it down on TTS. All we need to know is the red player is in at 120 and this player is in at 115. Let's imagine purple, which we don't have, so there'll be a PRR, bids on the C and STL. And then we get back to blue, and the blue player says, you know what, I'm going to buy the cheapest private. So they spend face. They spend the $20. And then what you do, they spend $20 to get this private. Then what you do is evaluate, does the next private in line have a bid? The C and STL does. Does it have 2 bids? It does not. So the player with 1 bid simply wins that private for whatever they bid. This player bid 45. Go, this player, good work. They spend 45 on the CSTL. That's a good deal. This player also only had 1 bid. That's a great deal. I spend 75. Oh, look, we get to the M&H. The M&H has 2 bids on it. Those 2 players, whomever has the lowest bid, it could have 3 bids on it. Let's pretend purple also bid on it. Whomever has the lowest bid gets first crack at whether they're going to bid or pass. And then you go clockwise from there. You always have to raise by 5. Once you pass, you're out. And whoever is the last player in wins. So let's imagine that the bids were 115, 120, 125. The C&O player might say, that's too rich for my blood, I'm out. The red player might say, I'll go 130. This player might say, I'll go 140. I'll go 145. This player passes. This player now gets it for 145, whatever the agreed last bid was. So you only have an auction in the waterfall auction if at least 2 players have decided to bid. The lower bid player gets to start, and then you go clockwise from there. And the only actions you have in this auction are buy the cheapest private or elect to bid on a different private. We now go to whomever we call it pulled, whoever did the last action, which is the blue player, bought. So now it's my turn to act as I'm left of the last actor. I would definitely buy the CNA for face because my actions again are either buy the CNA or bid on the B&O. This would be a terrible auction that would never happen, but we'll get there. I would buy the CNA for face, and then the next players can either buy. You can always pass in the auction. I'm sorry, but let's imagine they bought the B&O for $220. Some things you can always pass in the auction. If you pass, you're not out. If it comes back to you, you can place a bid or act again. You're only out if you're in a bid off for an auction after someone has pulled the ripcord. If all players pass in a row, all privates that are owned get paid out, and maybe the Schuylkill goes down 5. I don't remember. I think the Schuylkill goes down 5. I can't believe I forgot a rule. I'm not going to look it up. But it's only the Schuylkill. It might be the cheapest private. Jeez, I can't believe I just forgot. Let's see. Do they have it here? Prep for play, stock round. I'm not going to look it up. That's embarrassing. There is a thing that happens when everybody passes. I can't believe I forgot. I think it's all privates pay, and maybe if the Schuylkill's around, it goes down by 5. But that could possibly happen. That's the private auction. The player who goes first in the initial stock round is the left of whomever acted last, which is almost always going to be the player who buys the B&O. The B&O rarely gets a bid. So imagine red bought the B&O, then purple would be the first to act in the stock round. If somehow the B&O had a bid on it, it would be whoever bought the private that starts the cascade. The player to the left of them is first in the stock round. The privates, I'll go over the private powers last. The next thing you need to know is there's one thing you can do with the privates. At the beginning of every operating round, wherever the private is, it will pay out. So each of these privates has a revenue, $25, $5, $15. At the beginning of every operating round, not operating set, every operating round on TTS, you'll slam this button. In real life, everyone will say, did we pay privates? Then you'll hit pay privates, and you'll see everyone gets that money. Privates are either in players' hands or they're in companies. At any turn any time during a company's stock round, the company can buy a private from a player, as long as both the company and the player agree, for up from $1 up to double its face value. So the Mohawk and Hudson is worth $110. Imagine this player was the president of the Mohawk and Hudson, and the B&O or the B&M, let's say it floated at $760. As its first action, it can give this player up to twice the Mohawk and Hudson, up to $220. Some keys, you must at least be in phase 3. So you'll see that here, private companies may be purchased. Once that happens, the private will go into the company, and then the private will pay when we hit pay dividends or pay privates. You'll see, bada bing, this company gets $20 more. So wherever the private is, it pays during the operating round, and only during the operating round, any company can buy any private from any player as long as all the entities agree from $1 to double the face value of the private. That's it. You just have to have the money to do it. You can do that at any time. That is buying privates. It's very important in 1830. It is how you really figure out the value of the privates. I'm going to reload the mod one more time just so we can go over what each private does, and that'll be all the rules. Some key concepts while I'm loading this mod. Remember, people never sell anything in this game. Entities do not sell. They only buy. Only the cheapest goes down. Thank you. Thank you for fixing that. Yeah. Entities only sell in this game. So you have to think like, only buy. I'm sorry. Can I sell a train to a company? You cannot. It has to be the turn of the company that is buying. Can I sell a private to a company? You cannot. It has to be the turn of the company that's buying the private. There are only buyers. The only thing that gets sold in this game are shares to the bank pool during a stock round. So what do the privates do? The Schuylkill Valley does nothing. It is $20. It gets 5 revenue. This hex cannot be laid until the Schuylkill Valley is bought by a company or closed. And in this game, all privates close at the 6. Once someone buys a 6 train, all the privates rust effectively. If they weren't used, they don't get used. You just rip them up. The CNSTL, or the Champlain and St. Lawrence, is a $40, 10 revenue. It blocks, these are all blockers, so it blocks this hex, which means, again, you cannot lay track on that hex unless this has been bought in or has been, the 6 has happened. A corporation may lay a tile on that hex, even if the hex is not connected to the corporation's railhead, for free, and it's an addition. So at any time during a company's turn, who owns this private, it can lay this hex. So, and it doesn't have to have any connectivity. It doesn't have to be the CPR. They just can lay this hex legally. The Delaware and Hudson, during that player's turn for their token step, or their track laying step, they can pay 120, right? Oh, that's because of the hex. So during their token step, they can choose to place a station here in this hex. You still have to pay your station cost, and then they can also choose to put a tile down. The tile you still have to pay the 120 cost. So the CNO might own it. Say the CNO owns it on their turn. They have no connectivity. They can say, I'm using this private power. I'm going to spend my 140 to put my 160 to put my token here, and I'm also going to lay this tile. And that is legal as long as they own that company. It's not when you buy it in, it's just at any time. The Mohawk and Hudson, during the stock round, you can trade it in for a share of the NYC. You can't go over your 60% limit. And it can be done at any time. The CNA simply just comes with a share of the PRR. And then the BNO comes with the presidency of the BNO. Once the BNO is purchased, that president will immediately pick a par value. The BNO will not be floated because only 2 shares of it are out. But you become the president of the BNO. It also blocks the BNO and this hex. And the BNO private is different in that it closes the first time the BNO company buys a train. So that's easy to forget. Once the BNO player buys a train, you close the company. That is all the rules to 1830. Whew, 53 minutes. My bet was 45 minutes. So I didn't beat it. I think if I did 89, maybe I would beat it, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't. That was all the rules with no prep and no examples set up. Probably a little too thorough, but I didn't win. I lost. I'm really sad. Maybe if I spoke faster. I don't think I got any rules wrong. I definitely missed floating. I apologize. Floating is a really important concept. Companies don't float and don't operate until 60% of them are out. What else should I have focused on more? End of the game was fine. Rusting is really important. So again, once a train is bought, all the trains that say they get rusted by immediately go away. There's no recompense. You don't get to run them again. They immediately go away. You throw them out of the game. I missed a rule. No one caught it? No one caught it. I missed upgrading. Okay. So for completeness sake, even though we probably won't post this, I did miss a rule. When after the first 6 is purchased, a player can trade any train in for a diesel at a discount of $300. What that means is after the first 6 is purchased, the only trains that are alive are the 4, 5s, and 6s. A company can spend $800 instead of $1,100. They will trash their train into the bank and buy a diesel. You can do that. Sorry, it even says that right there. You can do that if you're at train limit because you're trading the train in. It will immediately rust the 4s. So a lot of the times you'll see it traded in with a 4, but only one player could ever trade in a 4. You could trade in another permanent, but that rarely happens. And I think because it's a trade-in, you can do it at train limit, which I feel pretty sure about. But I did miss that rule. I apologize. Train required. Let's see. Oh, I didn't do the base of the Erie either. When you start the Erie, it has 2 homes. You pick its home when you start it, when you float it. Or probably when you first operate it, because that's when tokens go down in this game, when they first operate. And you can't token it until the Erie has started. So that's kind of important, but not super important. And then the last thing I didn't highlight is the New York hex. It doesn't. It has its upgrade cost right there. Never mind. So we're fine. So what do I really want to look for is trade-in of a diesel. I don't think it's here. This is a terrible rule book. Revenue, stages. Okay, here. Diesels may be bought for trade-in. Train may be traded through it, but note the purchase of the first diesel removes 4 trains. Doesn't say it. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can do it if you're a train limit. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know why I don't remember that. Probably because I just spoke for an hour. All right, cool. Well, I lost. I lost my challenge. It took 53 minutes. But that was fun. That was more fun than I thought it would be. That's it. That's 1830. The key things about it are the machinations are very, very simple. You you selling stock, are there at least 50% in the bank pool? No, you can do it. Buying stock, am I going over any of the cert limits? So over 60% or over cert limit? No. Did I sell it this stock turn around? No, you can buy it. Pass. Do I pass? I pass. And then when you operate your companies, you always do this. You literally look at the player aid and you just do this in order. You lay a track. The only thing the only thing you care about is, can I legally touch the track? So am I going through anywhere that's tokened out? As long as you're not, you can upgrade the track. That's different in other 18xx games. It's actually the easiest in 1830, as long as you're preserving new track. So I'll just go over a funny example in this game. So in 1830, if I was the PRR, I could turn this track into this track. In a lot of other games, you can't do it because, again, that didn't break the rule of preserving the old track. Token, do you have the money? Can you legally reach the city you want to token? You can token it. Run trains, just count the revenue centers on your trains. You technically have to run for the most amount of money, but count the revenue centers on your trains, add them up, decide whether you can't reuse track. You can re-hit cities as long as you don't run through them on the same track. You can use cities that you're token out of as long as you don't run through them. Count up all your revenue, decide whether you're paying out or withholding. If you pay out, you move your stock to the right. If you withhold, you move your stock to the left. I missed floating up too. Move your stock to the left, and then if you pay out, every share gets 10%. If it's in the bank pool, it goes to the company. If it's in a player's hand, it goes to the player. If you withhold, all that money goes into the company's treasury. Then the next thing you do is buy trains. You always have to buy the cheapest train available from the train pool. You can buy whatever trains available from the bank. You buy both of those at the cost of the train, or you can buy trains from another company for as much money as that company wants to sell them to you for, as long as both presidents agree. Forced buying, if you have a legal route, you have to own a train. If the company can't afford a train, it goes to the president. And if the president can't afford the train, they're bankrupt and the game's over. The president can sell shares. They have to follow the normal share selling rules, with the only exception that they can't sell a share they can't sell the presidency of the company that's force buying. And that's it. You will just do that as many times as the phase you're in. And again, this only changes if you are in that phase when you move to the OR. I should have highlighted that more in the teach. But if you're in the SR and you're only on the 2s, you will only have one OR. Even if during that OR a 3 gets bought, this value is basically checked when you go from the SR to the OR. So same thing, if you're on the 4s, you'll have 2 ORs. Even if someone buys a 5 during that first set, it doesn't matter. Or during that first round, it doesn't matter. You'll still only have 2. That's the whole game. Then you just play till bank break. When the bank breaks, the game's over. So the summary was pretty short. And I'm done. I'm done talking. We have to do a podcast tonight. I lost. That's all I can say. I got to take the L. Aside from that, whomever watched, thanks. Maybe we'll put it on YouTube. I'm not sure. If you want to follow anything we do, go to dadsonmap.com. We'll have a new podcast out. I don't know, whenever James can edit it, tomorrow or the next day. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Peace.